What if I told you that the richest man in the Philippines in 2026 was recently seen quietly breaking down cardboard boxes next to a recycling bin? You heard it right. Here are the 8 extremely rich Filipino billionaires who live like they're poor. And trust me, these stories get only wilder as we go down the list, so let's begin this countdown without further ado. Number 8. John Gokongwei Jr. He built a $1.8 billion empire without ever finishing school. Here's a question to start with. What does a kid do when his wealthy family loses everything and his father dies, leaving him as the oldest sibling with zero income and a household to feed? If you're John Gokongwei Jr., you get on a bicycle and start selling soap, thread, and candles door to door across Cebu. No pity party, no plan B, just a bike and a relentless refusal to let the math beat you. Gokongwei was born into privilege in 1926, but privilege has a way of disappearing overnight, and his disappeared fast. With no fortune left and no college degree, he never finished. He built JG Summit Holdings into one of the largest conglomerates in the Philippines, spanning food and beverages through Universal Robina Corporation, real estate through Robinson's Land, aviation through Cebu Pacific Air, and digital banking through GoTime Bank. The man who peddled goods on Cebu streets eventually owned the airline flying over those streets. That trajectory is almost aggressively inspiring. What made Gokongwei genuinely fascinating wasn't the empire. It was the intellectual obsession that drove it. He collected annual reports from companies all over the world and spent hours studying them, the way other wealthy people study wine lists. History, philosophy, successful business people's decisions across decades. He consumed all of it with the hunger of someone who knew that formal education had been a luxury he couldn't afford and who was determined to build the equivalent himself, one annual report at a time. His health habits matched the discipline. Daily swims, regular walks, an almost military approach to maintaining the body that was running the machine. He passed in 2019, but the standard he set lives on in his son Lance, who started his own career selling branded goods to local stores, learning market dynamics from the ground up, rather than stepping into the CEO chair from a corner office. The bicycle, it turns out, was a family tradition. Next up is a name who quit architecture school at 19 and stumbled into the greatest fast food insight in Philippine history. Number 7. Edgar Injap Sia II. The architecture dropout who invented unlimited rice. The story of how Mang Inasal's Unli Rice became a Philippine cultural institution starts in a place you'd never expect, the telecom industry. Edgar Injap Sia II, nickname apparently derived from his Japanese heritage, which is a fun detail, was running his barbecue chain in Iloilo City and watching the mobile networks offer unlimited calls and texts to drive volume. He looked at that model, looked at a plate of inasal and thought, what if rice worked the same way? What if there's unlimited rice? It sounded like a dream, but Sia wanted to make this dream come true. He founded Mang Inasal in 2003 after dropping out of architecture school at 19 and cycling through a laundry business and a photo developing center. The kind of early 20s entrepreneurial flailing that usually goes nowhere but occasionally produces something extraordinary. In this case, a BBQ chain so popular that Tan Caktiong of Jollibee bought a majority stake in it, making Sia the youngest billionaire in the Philippines at 34 in 2011. Most architecture graduates haven't even paid off their student loans at 34. His net worth sits between $1.2 billion and $1.8 billion, and what he does with it is telling. He has gifted substantial company shares to his siblings, treating his wealth as a collective family resource rather than a personal trophy. He's building 100 city malls in third-class cities that have never seen a proper shopping mall, not because it's the most profitable play, but because he grew up in a provincial city and knows what it means when infrastructure shows up where it wasn't before. His Hotel 101 model lets small investors own hotel units and earn from them, essentially democratizing real estate participation at a price point that actually works. He's been described as friendly and easy to mistake for an ordinary businessman. Given that ordinary businessmen don't usually own a billion-dollar mall development company by their mid-30s, that's saying something significant about how lightly he wears the whole thing. Now, the next couple on this list built their fortune during an economic crisis, because sometimes the best time to open a grocery store is when everyone around you is panicking. Number 6. Lucio and Susan Co. built a retail empire during a financial crisis. The 1997 Asian financial crisis destroyed a lot of fortunes. Lucio and Susan Co. used it as a business plan. Watching prices of basic goods spike while their employees struggled to afford groceries, they pivoted from their oil and minerals operation, which was taking a beating anyway, and opened the first pure gold price club in Mandaluyong in 1998. The logic was refreshingly direct. People always need food, especially when times are bad. Build the store that serves the people who are always there, not the ones who disappear when markets turn. Today, Pure Gold is the second largest retailer in the Philippines with over 500 branches. They also own S&R Membership Shopping, acquired in 2012 for 16.5 billion pesos to capture the higher-income warehouse-style market. Add to that the Keepers Holdings, the largest imported spirits distributor in the country, holding exclusive distribution rights for Johnnie Walker and Red Bull, plus PBCom Bank, Costco Capital Real Estate Holdings, and a partnership with Ayala Land at Harbor Point in Subic. Their combined net worth sits around $3 billion, and they have given exactly 0 interviews about any of it. That last part is not an exaggeration. The costs are notoriously, almost artfully elusive. They don't appear in profiles. They don't sit on panels. They don't show up in society pages. They are running a multi-billion peso enterprise across retail, banking, real estate, and spirits distribution. And they do it with a collective public profile that rivals most mid-level managers at companies they could buy outright. Their management style is described as compassionate, a genuine care for employee welfare that dates back to the crisis, years when that loyalty was what kept the machine running, when everything outside was on fire. They run a program called Tindahan ni Aling Puring that gives sari-sari store owners access to entrepreneurial resources, 3 billion pesos in the bank, and they're mentoring neighborhood shop owners. That's a very specific set of priorities, and it's a completely admirable one. Let's now head to a man who competes globally and is humble as a bee, which is either a business strategy or just genuinely who he is. Probably both. Number 5. Tony Tan Caktiong outcompeted McDonald's with humility as his only secret weapon. Let's be real about something for a second. When McDonald's entered the Philippine market in the 1980s with its global brand, its supply chain, its marketing machine, and its billions in institutional capital, the rational expectation was that local competition would fold. What actually happened is that a quiet chemical engineering graduate from UST, who had started with 2 ice cream parlors in 1975, politely refused to be intimidated and kept growing. Jollibee is now bigger than McDonald's in the Philippines, and it has been for decades. Tony Tan Caktiong's net worth sits between $1.1 billion and $3.2 billion, and Jollibee Foods Corporation, which he founded in Manila after pivoting from ice cream to hot meals when he noticed what customers actually wanted, is the largest fast food company in the country. Not the largest local company, the largest, period. The chain includes Chowking, Greenwich, and a growing international footprint with thousands of outlets worldwide after spending a record $366 million in 2025 to open up to 800 new stores in a single year. His colleagues describe him as being humble as a bee. He enjoys simple meals. He engages franchisees as peers rather than subordinates. He is not known to drive flashy cars or wear designer labels, which makes him either unusual for his wealth tier or a man who simply never let the money renegotiate who he was. The second option seems more likely. His current big bet beyond burgers is Double Dragon Corporation, a real estate partnership with Edgar Sia II building city malls in provincial areas, and a planned $2.3 billion listing of Hotel 101 on the NASDAQ. So yes, the humble bee is also thinking at a scale that most CEOs twice his profile size wouldn't attempt. Quiet doesn't mean small. It just means he doesn't need you to know about it before it's done. Now, the next person on this list is 102 years old, started with 200 pesos, and has watched her store burn down and flood so many times she probably stopped flinching. Number 4. Socorro Ramos. 102 years old and still running. An empire. Socorro Ramos is 102 years old. She started National Bookstore in 1942 and is still the matriarch of the company. At 12, she was working in a cigarette factory, peeling paper off discarded cigarettes for reuse at 5 centavos per pack. 5 centavos per pack. And she saved that money with the same precision she would later apply to an empire of over 200 retail locations nationwide. The early career of Nanay Koring is essentially a masterclass in adversity management. Her store was destroyed by fire during the Battle of Manila in World War II. Then it was destroyed by a typhoon. Then destroyed again by another typhoon. Each time she rebuilt from the inventory that survived, or from the savings she had refused to touch, and each time she came back slightly larger than before. The stubbornness alone would be remarkable. The fact that she built a $3.1 billion enterprise on top of it is almost unreasonable. Her foundational principle was a lifetime horror of credit, a phrase she reportedly used to describe her relationship with bank loans, which she simply never took. Expansion happened through reinvested profits and nothing else. The 9-story Albuquerque building on Avenida, named after her children, was built without a single peso of borrowed money. That kind of discipline, applied consistently for 8 decades, is what $3.1 billion looks like when it grows slowly and surely instead of aggressively and fragilely. Her lifestyle is legendarily frugal. She designed the National Bookstore logo herself. She personally scouted store locations to make sure books were accessible to students and teachers in the right areas. Her grandson has since launched NBS College to train entrepreneurs, carrying her literacy mission into the next generation. And she is, as of this writing, still the matriarch of all of it at 102 years old, which means she's outlasted 3 fires, 2 typhoons, the Japanese occupation, decades of Philippine political turbulence, and whatever the modern equivalent of all that is. Next up is a man who mopped floors to fund his engineering degree and ended up flying professors in by helicopter to teach him philosophy. Number 3. Lucio Tan. Mopped factory floors and now owns an airline. There is something specifically clarifying about the detail that Lucio Tan once walked to school barefoot. Not as a metaphor, not as a figure of speech, as the literal daily morning experience of the eldest child of a family that had immigrated from Fujian, China to Cebu, and was making things work on very slim margins. He is 91 years old and worth approximately $3.5 billion in 2026, and the distance between barefoot school walks and owning Philippine Airlines, Asia's first airline, which he took control of in 1992, is one of the longest arcs in the history of Philippine business. The tobacco industry was where the engine turned over. He started in a tobacco factory as a janitor, mopping floors to fund a chemical engineering degree at Far Eastern University while working. He rose from janitor to tobacco cook to leaf dealer, founded Fortune Tobacco in 1966, and launched the Hope cigarette brand in 1975, a budget cigarette targeting lower-income Filipinos that became a commercial phenomenon precisely because he understood that market the way only someone who had lived inside it could. His LT Group conglomerate now spans the airline, Asia Brewery, Tandway Distillers, one of the largest rum producers in the world, PNB, Allied Bank, and significant real estate holdings. The breadth of it is extraordinary. The lifestyle attached to it is almost willfully ordinary. Plain white shirts, modest meals, a notoriously private personal life that has frustrated journalists for decades. One known extravagance: he hires professors from China and flies them in specifically to teach him Chinese history, philosophy, and the romance of the Three Kingdoms. That's not a luxury. That's a man who never got enough school and is making up for it at 91 in the most efficient way he can think of. His philanthropic legacy runs through the Tan Yan Ki Foundation, which has built schools and funded scholarships across the country. He is also the majority owner of the University of the East, one of the most financially stable universities in the Philippines. The man who couldn't afford shoes as a kid is now funding the schools for the kids who look like he once did. And as impressive as this sounds, let's now talk about a man who became the richest person in the Philippines, but was last spotted doing something that will make you do a double check. Number 2. Enrique Razon Jr., richest Filipino. In 2026, breaking down cardboard boxes. In 2026, Enrique Razon Jr. was named the richest person in the Philippines, with a net worth that jumped from $10.9 billion in 2025 to $16.5 billion in 2026, a more than 50% increase driven by the explosive global expansion of International Container Terminal Services, Inc., which now operates ports in 20 countries across 6 continents. Ranked 175th in the world. Largest listed company in the Philippines by market cap. Chairman of Bloomberry Resorts. Significant player in the Malampaya Energy Project and a champion of small modular nuclear reactors as a solution to the Philippines' power challenges. And someone watched him, at a gathering, quietly breaking down cardboard boxes beside the recycling bins when the event was over. Not because anyone asked him to. Not because cameras were rolling. Because it apparently did not occur to him that this was a task that should belong to someone other than him. This is the reluctant tycoon phenomenon in its purest form. Razon dropped out of school at 17, not because he had a startup idea, but to go work at his father's cargo loading company for minimum wage, starting from literally the bottom of the labor chain and working upward. The fortune he built over the decades came from applying that same ground-level perspective to every business decision. Understand the work before you manage the people doing it, and never believe that any task is beneath the person in charge. His philanthropy is equally quietly serious. The Razon Group provides thousands of scholarships for marginalized youth. He acquired a stake in Manila Water to improve utility services for the capital's residents. He pushes nuclear energy not because it's fashionable, but because he's looked at the country's power supply problem and decided that incremental solutions won't close the gap fast enough. The cardboard box detail, though. Richest person in the Philippines in 2026, net worth climbing towards $17 billion, and he's flattening boxes next to a bin because why wouldn't he? That single image tells you more about how he built what he built than any annual report ever could. And now, the family at number 1 didn't just build the biggest private fortune in the Philippines. They built the malls that shaped how an entire generation of Filipinos experienced modern life, and their daily exercise was walking the floors of what they owned. Number 1, the Sy siblings / Henry S.Y. Sr. $14.4 billion empire and a daughter who started work at age 13. Henry Sy Sr. arrived in the Philippines at age 12 from Fujian, China, to join his father, who ran a small sari-sari store in Manila. The store was destroyed during World War II. He rebuilt by selling shoes, one pair at a time, from a single downtown Manila shop called Shoe Mart in 1958. From that shoe store, he built SM Investments Corporation, one of the most diversified and consequential conglomerates in Southeast Asia, spanning retail, banking through BDO Unibank, the largest bank in the Philippines, property through SM Prime Holdings, China Bank, mining through Anglo-Philippine Holdings, and a mall network that fundamentally changed the physical and social geography of the country. The combined net worth of the Sy family siblings in 2025 to 2026 is estimated between $11.8 billion and $14.4 billion, making them the most consistently dominant private wealth in the country across the last decade. And the lifestyle attached to all of it is so deliberately, almost stubbornly modest that it reads less like personal preference and more like a philosophical position. Henry Sy Sr.'s famous daily exercise was walking around his own shopping malls. Not a treadmill, not a private trainer. He walked the mall floors, which served the dual purpose of keeping him physically active and letting him personally sense the pulse of the business at ground level. You could be in an SM mall and walk past the man responsible for its existence without knowing it, because he looked like someone who was there to buy something from National Bookstore. This culture was not accidental, and it was not optional. His daughter Teresita Sycoson, now chairperson of the retail arm, began working in the family business every day after school at age 13. There were no special summer vacations. There were no generous allowances designed to insulate the children from the reality of what the business actually required. Work was the expectation, and the expectation was non-negotiable. His personal operating philosophy was one of the most counterintuitive in Philippine business. In good times, he did his usual work. In bad times, he worked harder. SM City North EDSA, now one of the most visited malls in the country, was built in 1983 during a period of intense political turmoil with interest rates sitting at 45%. Most developers looked at those conditions and waited. Sia looked at them and broke ground. The contrarian bet that looks obvious in retrospect almost always looked insane at the time it was made. His reinvestment philosophy flows through the next generation. The Sia siblings continue expanding SM's provincial footprint into areas like Mandaue, Cebu, and La Union, extending the mall network into communities that didn't previously have access to the infrastructure SM represents. They hold mining interests through Atlas Consolidated that reflect a deliberate diversification into industrial assets alongside the consumer-facing business. The BDO Unibank position makes them participants in essentially every significant financial transaction that passes through the Philippine economy. Henry Sia Sr. passed in January 2019. His adage, that in bad times you work harder, is not a motivational poster in their offices. It is the operating manual of the family that walks their own malls, sends their children to work after school at 13, breaks ground during 45% interest rates, and somehow built the single largest private fortune in the country out of a post-war shoe store on a Manila sidewalk. And that's a wrap on the 8 extremely rich Filipino billionaires who live like they are poor. Which of these stories about modesty impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments, and for more such interesting peeks into the lives of rich, take a look at Global Status.